Okay, today I'll discuss on the poem Christabel by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and in today's discussion I'll discuss the poem, its meaning and its symbolical meaning and significance of the title, etc. In this discussion I'm not going to talk about the poet Coleridge, because in the previous lecture about the poem Kubla Khan we had a discussion on the poet. Now talking about the poem Christabel, if we look at the title, the poem is entitled according to the name of the most important character of the poem, who is none other than Christabel. We know Christabel is a beautiful, charming woman, lady, young lady, and she is the central character of the poem. And if we analyze her name, we find that there are two words, one is Christ and another is Abel, and these two names are very much associated with Christianity. We know Christ is the exponent of Christian religion, and Christ is a martyr who sacrificed his life for the purification of the evil of the earth. And Abel is also a martyr who was killed by his brother Cain. Abel was son of Adam and Eve. He was killed by his brother Cain, and he is also a martyr, symbol of good killed by bad. Now these two characters, Christ and Abel, togetherly forms Christabel, and in this poem we also see there is fight between goodness and evil. Christabel is the symbol of innocence and goodness, whereas another character whom we will find in the poem, Geraldine, she is the symbol of evil, supernatural element, badness, and she will possess Christabel, who is symbol of goodness in the poem. Okay, now going to the poem, what happens in the poem? We see the poem describes a medieval castle, medieval setting is there, a supernatural setting is there. The setting is mysterious, kind of airy, supernatural atmosphere has been created in the poem. We are taken to a medieval castle, the castle of Sir Llewellyn, who is father of Christabel, old medieval castle, which is encircled by a moat. And we see there is a castle clock which sounds its bell and strikes that it is the middle of the night, which is associated with supernatural atmosphere. And then we find hooting of the owl. Hooting of the owl is also part of supernatural element. Then we find hooting of the owl awakens the crow or roost, which generally declares the beginning of a day, and roost starts crowing, and the old mastiff bitch, which is there in the castle, it starts barking at middle of the night. So this kind of airy atmosphere has been created in the very beginning of the poem. Then we find from the castle of Sir Llewellyn, his daughter Christabel goes out at dead at midnight, and she goes to the nearby jungle and sits under a oak tree and starts praying for her lover, who is absent, who has who is absent, who has gone somewhere else, and of whom she dreamt in the previous night. Now Christabel starts praying under the oak tree, and it's a mysterious jungle. The jungle is full of trees, but most of the trees are leafless. One could see the moon, which is full but not bright, dull full moon, which is also part of supernatural element. The supernatural atmosphere has been created. The night is chilly, cold night. It's dark but not that dark. It is not everything is invisible because of darkness. No, many things are visible because it is not absolute darkness. Now, in this way, a subtle, airy, mysterious atmosphere has been created in the poem. Now, Christabel, what happens? She starts praying under the oak tree, and suddenly she hears the sound of moaning. Someone is moaning at midnight inside the forest, and she starts guessing the source of the moaning, where from it is coming. And after initial search, she found that a beautiful, ravishing woman in a gorgeous robe, silken white, whose hands, then neck and face is full bright white. She is mourning, and she is on the other side of the oak tree where she was praying. Now, a suspense and mysterious atmosphere has been in this way created by the poet, and the woman, because of her presence, seems unnatural, mysterious. How can a woman be present dead at midnight in this place? So in this way, a mysterious atmosphere has been created, and Christabel finds this woman, who is none other than Geraldine, who is evil incarnate, who is the symbol of evil. But she is here present as a beautiful, ravishing woman. Now, Christabel asks Geraldine some questions. She asks about her identity. And Geraldine, in the beginning, she was not ready to answer Christabel, and she said that she was fatigued, and she is reluctant. She was reluctant to express her identity, but immediately after, she expresses her identity, that she is a woman of noble family. She was kidnapped by some 5 warriors, and she was tied to a horse and was brought here. The warriors left her there. In fact, the tallest of the warriors left her here, and they told her that they would come back to take her back. And now she is distressed, she is fatigued, she is helpless, she wants some shelter, and she pleads for shelter to Christabel. What happens? Christabel tells that okay, she is ready to give shelter because she belongs to a noble family, and though her father is sick, her father would not deny Christabel giving shelter to Geraldine. So we see then Geraldine requests Christabel to hold her hand and lift her. She extends her hand, and Christabel also pulls her up, and in this way we see evil is brought up by Christabel herself. In those days, they were saying that evil cannot touch you and come to your home unless you touch it and bring it in your home like coronavirus. Christabel, in fact, she went out of the home. Had she stayed inside the home, she would have been safe, but she went out of the home, and uh, she also touched Geraldine, and in this way she brought evil in her home. Okay, what happened next? Christabel brought Geraldine home, and since her father was ill, she did not take the trouble of waking him up, and without telling anyone, she brought Geraldine inside her room. And what happened when she brought Geraldine, who is evil incarnate, inside her room? There some supernatural occurrence happened. She brought Geraldine inside her home through the iron gate, which is also part of medieval castle. The description of the iron gate is very much medieval. If we look at the large iron gate in front of the Coach Behar Palace, we can visualize the medieval iron gate. Okay, she brought Christabel through the iron gate. Then when they were entering into the castle, suddenly the old mastiff beast started barking, which is sign of something bad is entering into the home. Then what happened? Before the threshold, that means before the entrance of the hall, suddenly Geraldine drooped down. Then Christabel picked her up and dragged her inside the room. When she was dragged and brought inside the room, she stood on her feet and started walking. So in this way, again, this point has been hinted that if you do not bring evil inside your home, it cannot come. It depends on you. Okay, what happens next? Christabel brought Geraldine inside the palace, and when they were crossing the furnace, suddenly a flicker in the furnace rose up, which is also again another symbol of evil entering into the home. In this way, with subtle hints, Coleridge has created a supernatural atmosphere. Now, Christabel enters into the bedchamber of Geraldine. Geraldine enters into the bedchamber of Christabel. What happens then? Geraldine is given some potion which was made by Christabel's mother, who is now dead. In fact, she died at childbirth. When Christabel was born, she died at that time, but she is present there. In fact, her spirit is present to guard Christabel from the evil elements, evil souls. Now, that potion which was made by Christabel's mother was served to Geraldine by Christabel, and Geraldine had a drink of that potion, and then Christabel started talking about her mother, that her mother is always there to protect her, and she is as a spirit is protecting her. Suddenly Geraldine became nervous and started saying, off you spirit. This kind of words were uttered by Geraldine. Christabel thought that Geraldine must have been having a hallucination, because so much torture she went through. But actually Geraldine, who is an evil spirit, is asking the good spirit of Christabel's mother to go away so that she can possess Christabel's soul. Okay, next what happens? Geraldine tells Christabel to undress and go to the bed, and she says that when Christabel goes to the bed after undressing, she also undresses, and she says that she will go to the bed after the prayer. And in the dim light of the room, Christabel, when she was in on the bed, she saw Geraldine uh, dropping her dresses. She dropped her dresses. She untied the belt, and her uh, whole dress, I mean upper and inner, all the elements of her garments dropped down, and from the side, Christabel was able to see the side view. She could see the breast and side view of Geraldine, and what happened there after there. I mean, what exactly did she see was not expressed in the poem, but what happened after watching that view, Christabel became hypnotized. She was possessed, and there are many surmises, many guesses what Christabel saw on the breast of Geraldine. But you know, Coleridge has left it to the readers. The supernatural element, what Geraldine, what Christabel saw, is left to the readers. You have to make a vision according to your perception, according to your thoughts. Now, what happened? Geraldine, after showing Christabel her body, she went to the bed and uh, took Christabel on her arms and started taking hold of her soul. And in this way, they started, both of them started sleeping on the bed. And what happened in the next morning, if we see the concluding part of the poem, in the next morning, Christabel is a different woman. She has become afraid, she has become restless, she is thinking of some sin. She is a different woman. She is not that bright, beautiful, charming, laughing woman of the previous day. She has become a she has become a changed woman, and she is not telling anyone anything because of the evil spirit that has went inside her soul, and she has been totally captured by the evil spirit of Geraldine. Now she is being controlled by Geraldine, and here the poem comes to in fact the first part of the poem comes to an end. Now what happens in the poem we have come to know, but what is the meaning of all these things? Now we see in this poem supernatural elements are very much present. Supernatural elements, if you uh, start thinking about the elements I have talked about, the description of the medieval castle, old mastiff beige, then hooting of the owl, bright, full moon, but not bright, dull full moon. It's not a night, chilly night, dark yet not that dark. All these are parts of supernatural elements. Then we see uh, Christabel is, Geraldine is also a supernatural element. Christabel's mother, spirit, the presence of Christabel's mother is also adding to the supernatural element of the poem. But again, we see like Kubla Khan, Christabel is, the poet is not dealing the supernatural elements in a crude way. For example, the description of the body, the breast, especially the breast of Geraldine, which is left to the readers, which is an expression of the subtlety of I mean Coleridge. Then we see another thing in the treatment of the supernatural element. Coleridge makes Geraldine evil, but in spite of being evil in nature, we see there is conflict between good and evil in Geraldine. That is the refined element Coleridge has incorporated in his poem. Think about the beginning of the poem when Geraldine was not ready to express her identity, and she said that she was fatigued. Initially, after she expressed her identity, but the dilemma, the conflict in her mind, whether to possess Christabel or not, is the conflict of good and evil in the evil. So, this kind of subtlety is there. Then we see medievalism is there, medieval element, medieval castle, then moat, a water body surrounding the castle. Then the description of the castle, the inside rooms. These are parts of medieval element. Then the character of Christabel and Geraldine, their attire, dress, etc., part of medieval element. Now the poem expresses a conflict between the good and evil. Some poets, some critics have tried to explain this poem as a conflict between good and evil, and evil is possessing goodness here in this very first part of the poem. Christabel is the symbol of goodness, and who is being protected by her mother, and Geraldine is the symbol of evil nature. Now this poem has been expressed as Christabel's journey from innocence to experience also. Innocence and experience, you have read William Blake, you have idea about innocence and experience. Now many critics try to explain this poem as Christabel's journey from innocence to experience. Before visiting the jungle at night and bringing Christabel inside her room, she was innocent. That was her innocent period of her life. Innocence period of life. Now, when she went out of the room, she crossed the barriers of innocence and entered into the realm of experience. And Geraldine brought